Hello friends, Bright here. I'm here in the mountains in the contact site, and I'm going to take you and show you an area where I've been having contact with Yowie people, in particular a female who calls herself Tiartha. So I'll take you up there and see what I can show you. See you soon. So this is the most common inhabitants of the mountains. I'm going to obviously tell you about some different ones. And there's some wild goats running off. These particular goats, I think, ran away from a nearby goat farm and dashed over the hills and have gone feral and done very well. Again, I'm almost there, just trekking up the hill. So this area isn't particularly remote, but it is, away from where most people come. It's not a remote part of the mountains by any stretch. Excuse me, I'm a bit short of breath and a bad night's sleep, so if I look tired it's because I am. So I've been interested in this subject of the Yowies ever since I was a little boy. I used to live on the other side of the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. Sort of heading towards the town of Bathurst. On the farm I spent some time there with my grandmother. I think that's when I first heard about them. I was about 10 or 11. But back then, and many of the years since, I guess I just thought that was some kind of lost primate or hominid, something like that. And it was only really maybe 3-4 years ago I started hearing about them as beings who could move through dimensions, etc. And started to take that serious, and was starting to, when I moved to these mountains 5 years ago, I was starting to think about them, I wonder if they're here. And then I was speaking to my friend Todd Michael, who has written some books on the subject, and he encouraged me to think of them differently. I asked him, well, what about the fires we've had? He didn't see that would present them with a problem. And I should say that it's come to my attention that there's at least one doorway used by Itties here in the mountains. So I couldn't understand why, I couldn't see why the Yowie people couldn't access doorways in that way, but I guess I came to understand that they have this ability to move through space. And I don't like using the word dimensions really. And I've talked about interdimensional and intradimensional before. So, I guess we can think about it that way, but I guess maybe one way to think about it is they can move in phase with our reality and in and out of phase. So Todd encouraged me, I think, at the end of, what year is it, 14, 13? Near the end of 2013. And so I've been in contact with a group of 8 ETs I've talked about before, and I asked them about the issue, and they told me about a small population of them, about 30 odd, that live in the mountains here. These are pretty big mountains, so there's a lot of space. Mostly they live above the ridgeline. I guess very few things can get up there, and there are a lot of plateaus above the ridgeline. So they told me how to make contact, and I did what they suggested, and almost immediately, which surprised me, established telepathic contact with this particular entity, who called herself Tiatha, and I asked lots of questions, including where they were and how old they were, and last time they had contact with people. I've written all that down. I can't quite remember my notes now, but I remember her telling me about the story of her being in touch with a white man who lived here in the mountains, and before that an Aboriginal man. That was more than 100 years ago. And they had mixed kind of relationships with the Aboriginal people of this land. You know, some were frightened, and some, particularly certain elders, were much more comfortable with them and had good relationships. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's sort of see where we can go from here. So in 2013, early 2013, I was doing that. I was having these telepathic conversations, if you like, and I decided to come to this spot because I meditated in this spot here. I can't show you all of this spot. I need to sort of keep it a bit private. I had been meditating up the top there, and then I would come here and I would meditate in this spot here. It's very quiet on this side. It's throughout the year. It doesn't get a lot of sun, so it stays green most of the year. And as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see those butterflies, but there's often a lot of butterflies here. It's a very peaceful area, and so we have these big trees. And we have a lot of big trees in the mountains, but we have these big trees here anyway, and I've just become very attached to them in this area. And of course up there is the hill line mountains. So I would come here, and the first day that I attempted contact, I was just, I was sitting here, and I asked where she was, and she told me, and I said, can you provide me with some evidence that you're here, show me a sign. And I began to hear these wood knocks. They were quite loud, but not too loud. Now we do have a small tree hopper here who knocks on the trees. It's a bird that climbs up the trees looking for insects, and it will make some noise, but nothing like that. So I began by hearing these sounds, and it sort of travelled in a circle all the way around, and I could see nothing for it. Now what I tried to do is use these other senses that I've talked about before, certain internal senses, and I could see the entity. I could see this being, this Yowie being. I don't like calling them Yowies, but what else can we refer to them as? So for people who don't know, a Yowie is Bigfoot, Sasquatch, hairy folk, Yeti, whatever you want to call it, all within the same sort of general family. And I guess I was interested in this subject because, as well as all the things that I mentioned about my interest when I was younger, one of my guides told me about how he met them in ancient China, but these ones were extraterrestrial. So that got me curious. So it started here, and I would come here and I would hear the wood knocks, and I'm sure you can see me in that light. And then I asked where they lived, and they told me where they lived and said I was welcome to come and camp near where they lived. And that had been my plan early last year to do that, but the weather hasn't been conducive. We had floods and heavy rains, and this year we've had some more fires in that direction, and difficult roads to traverse. It's really a very isolated area, so I haven't been able to do that yet, but I hope to do that at some point. So one of the things I started doing as well was leaving gifts, and first set of gifts I left was a little package, a collection of some photos of some art and some plastic figurines and some other things. And one day the package was torn open, and it didn't look like it was torn open by anything I know that lives here. Possums, kangaroos, deer, goats. And it was in a difficult to access place, and it was covered up. And there was one image missing, which was an image of, it's an Aboriginal spirit that somebody had copied from a piece of cave art. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I'd done some artwork to it, added some effects to it. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. So then I asked if they would come and visit my home. And a couple of times I heard some odd sounds, and then one day I asked them, would you come and visit and talk to me, come to my bedroom window. And I totally forgot that I had to go away to Melbourne. So I asked a friend to house sit for me, and she came and house sitted. I'll just show you these little birds when I'm talking, if you can see them. Whenever I sit here, little birds just come from everywhere, come right up to you. So anyway, she's house sitting, and my son is in the house as well, and I'm in Melbourne, and I totally forget that I made this request. And she said from dusk till dawn, 3 days in a row, there was this very loud voice, louder than the television, which was quite loud, and it kept moving in circles within about 50 metres of the house, and it was calling out in a very loud voice. And she went out several times because it was keeping her awake. And there were a number of tourists staying at the time. We have a lot of tourists around us, and the tourists were also coming out looking for it and looking a bit uncomfortable. And she said it was kind of making a growl, but it was like a growly voice, and it was saying my name. She thought it was saying my name, but also she was hearing something that sounded like "go away," but she said that's not what it was saying, but that's what it sounded like. She said she couldn't make out the voice properly. So I thought that's interesting. And then I asked her if there was any evidence. She didn't see anything. She didn't see the entity. She didn't find anything outside. But she's used to these. She's used to unusual things, but she'd never encountered anything like that. So that was a bit uncomfortable for her. And then several months later, I was at home and once again asked for a visit, and my son said that he was woken up by what sounded like the same kind of thing, and once again it seemed to be calling my name, and he kind of went back to sleep and didn't wake me up, and I slept through the whole thing. So I also started leaving other kinds of gifts, like fruit, and the fruit would disappear, and there would be no sign of, say, the banana skins, and I would look all around thinking, maybe there's a possum here. I've camped here, and I know there actually aren't a lot of possums. There are lots of possums in other areas of the forest, but not many here. So I was aware of one small pygmy possum when I camped here, and usually you hear them and you become aware of them. It just doesn't seem to be an area where there are a lot of possums. Lots of birds, but not many possums. That's my hat. Don't know if you can see those little birds. So I've been leaving gifts and having these interactions with them, and so last night I brought my son out just had a feeling I should come out, and we were coming up the hill here. We were about 400 metres away, and I asked her if she would come and visit. And I showed my son what I'm about to show you, what I call the gifting trees, which is that tree there and that tree there. And he was kind of curious, but you know, he's a young 16-year-old who loves Minecraft and gaming and studying girls, and not really into Yowies, and sometimes easily frightened. He's also the person who's had numerous ET encounters with me, and usually sort of been rendered in some form unconscious or doesn't remember. Sometimes he's been conscious, but the memories are taken away. So yeah, we were here, and we only came for a short time, and it was around dusk, and I said, let's just sit down for a couple of minutes. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I asked her if she would show a sign, and I didn't tell him what we were doing, so we sat down in this very spot, and I swear no more than 10 seconds later we heard the loudest tree knock I've ever heard. It sounded like a huge rock had been bashed against the trees, and my son absolutely crapped himself. He leapt up. I've never seen him move so fast. He leapt up, he jumped off the ground and said, I want to get out of here. He was absolutely terrified. Anyway, I managed to calm him down. He settled down, and I told him what was happening. So the tree knocks took place over here. I could see the entity, I could see Teatha with my internal senses, and she had done the tree knocks at that tree there, and then I could see that she told me she was there, and I could see her standing in front of that tree. She was just observing us, and I was asking if she would appear. She said she realised my son was too scared, she didn't want to frighten me anymore, so she didn't. And afterwards it was interesting, my son got up and he tried to emulate the sound, and he couldn't make a sound that loud, and he's a pretty strong young guy. It was a really loud sound. So I thought that was interesting, that she should allow him to become aware of her presence. And it was actually nice that he heard something else, so he doesn't think his dad's crazy. You know, he heard the voices at night, and he sort of dismissed it as, you know, it was in the middle of the night, maybe he was dreaming or something, even though at the time he told me he was quite certain it was real. So last night he heard something else, and she told me she would be coming to visit again, so I expect that we'll hear the voices again. Hopefully I'll hear them this time. I'm looking forward to when I can see her. She said several times that my body wasn't strong enough to deal with it. It seems like the ETs, they seem to have a very strong energy, and if you're not energetically prepared for that, it can have a profound impact on your body and your state of consciousness. There certainly seems to be an issue around consciousness happening when you interact with them. Maybe it affects your state of consciousness. Maybe it takes you into a different state of consciousness. So I'll show you a couple of things. I came here the other day as well, after I said I came to the gift trees, and a couple of things happened. So this is a tree. I come and I put things in the fork of the tree. It's up high enough. The only thing that could possibly get is a possum, but as I said, I don't think there are many possums here. Unlikely a kangaroo would get up this high. It's about over 5 foot up. They couldn't reach, but they don't go looking for things. Possibly a deer could get up, but they leave a mess, you know, they leave banana peels, apple, all that sort of stuff. So I put in the fork there, and this one is uncovered. It's kind of like, think of it as a control. So my son put the remnants of, we brought 2 apples yesterday, and he busted his in half. So the apple's gone there, and over here we covered up the apple. So I often grab bark and I conceal it, so you can't see anything on that side. Maybe if you're an animal you could smell it, but you know, an intact piece of fruit, it's sort of hard to smell, but maybe they could. And then we cover it up on that side, so you can see, you can't see anything in there, assuming that it's still there. Okay, so there's an apple in there, if you can see that. Okay, so you know, I cover it up in different ways. I'll mix it up later. So I guess it's kind of a bit like a controlled experiment, if you like, the covered and the uncovered. And so what I asked for as well is if they take the fruit, if they could show me some other signs as well. So there are plenty of sticks on the ground and you know, ways for them to do things, and sort of had that happen, and bark as well. Now there's some bark up here I want to show you, and it's been moved. I chased them. I didn't do it deliberately, but when I was walking up here, some kangaroos went flying through here and knocked it all over. But last week when I came here after the fruit disappeared, there was this interesting setup of bark, and it was perfectly geometrical. So we had this bark here. You can't really tell because it's been knocked around, but it was coming up like that, and it looked pristine. It really did, like something had just taken it and folded it carefully back like that. And then there was a piece up here, and this is a piece that pulverized, and it was sort of set back. And this one was pointing, well, maybe pointing towards the tree there, where some bark has been dislodged. Some long strips. So I wasn't sure at first. I thought, well, is that something or not? The geometry of it and the pristine appearance of it is what got me. And so this bark tends to fall close to the tree. It just doesn't, you know, drop a long way away. So if it fell off this tree, you'd expect it to be right there, as you can see a piece of bark. So I looked around to see if there was anything else like this, and yeah, I know there are animals come and go here. So that was my first thing, you know, has an animal done this? But, you know, the fruit was gone and the pristine quality of it, and then the knock, the knocks, the set of 3 knocks, really loud knocks last night. The other thing I forgot to mention is when we were here, we could both feel the presence, and he could perceive it. He said, "Dad, I didn't want to say anything, but since we arrived in the area from down about there, down that way," he said he could feel this sensation in the back of his neck and his spine. And I've been trying to teach him how to use those senses and tune them. So we both had a very strong physical sense of the presence here, and he said he felt like he was being watched the whole time. That was why when he heard the sound he absolutely crapped himself. So there was this geometry, and as I said, it's sort of messed up at the moment. But what was interesting, it had been neatly folded back on all the corners, not just knocked, but neatly folded, like something had done it deliberately. Now, I've never seen a person come through here, so perhaps a person decided for some reason to do it, but would be really out of character with the place, what I know about the place, people coming through. There's some tracks here, and people just tend to stay on the tracks. So I don't know, and what's interesting is here's the bark, and here's where I meditate. So it's basically between where I meditate and the gifting trees. So that's been my experience so far with the Yowie people and a being who calls herself Tiafa. She says she has a mate and children and belongs to a small clan, and sometimes the mate has also come here. I'm looking forward to when they actually physically manifest. I'm not sure what the conditions will be that will allow that, but perhaps there's a sense they have that when I'm ready, physically ready or emotionally ready, they're very, very tall. I won't tell you how tall at the moment, but on par with some of the tall ETs. And that size, I think, is enough to frighten a lot of people. But my experience of them is that they're very gentle, very placid people, deeply spiritual, deeply connected to the earth, aware of the other ET presences, aware of the fact that there are versions of their own kind who live on other worlds as well. Whenever I hear her, I talk with her, it begins with a completely foreign tongue. It sort of has a rough quality to it. And then it's almost like it sort of dissolves into English. It's there's a transition into English, but it still has that rough quality to it. And there are some words that are missed, and it's not like fluent English as we would speak it. So it's quite an unusual experience, and I sort of see it as I see the ET experience. You go through a developmental spectrum of beginning maybe in a place of fear or discomfort, or even as I have been myself, in a place of doubt, and then you move through that and gain more confidence in believing in the experience. And I certainly had no problems in trusting them. Just trusting my own perception of it. It's only the fact that others now, two other people, have been able to perceive other things associated with this that's got me across the line, I guess, in a sense. And being here with my son last night and hearing quite categorically these wood knocks and both perceiving the same feelings. It's kind of interesting, I guess. Should always use doubt as a kind of discernment, but sometimes doubt can hijack you as well, so you have to put it aside. And I take a fair bit of convincing. It might sound silly given the subjects I've been talking about and having ET encounters, but I do take a lot of convincing, and I've been very slow to take this up as readily as I have taken up other things in my life. But I'm confident things will evolve from this point and follow that developmental trajectory, if you like, that the ET contact experiences have. And I guess what I'd like to say is it's really all about interspecies communication. It doesn't matter whether you're communicating with a cat or a dog or a dolphin or an elephant or an ET or a hairy folk, a hairy being. They're all sentient creatures with feelings and thoughts and intelligence. It's a matter of how willing we are to connect with that and get past doubt and preconceptions and popular ideas. So I encourage anybody who's interested in this subject to check out the website Fur and Cedar. Chris there is doing a great job at exploring that subject, and Mike Patterson, Sasquatch in Ontario, I think. Now Mike has his detractors, a lot of people don't like him, but I think he's the real deal, and he's worked with Chris recently and talking about his contacts. For people who are really interested in this subject, whatever country you're in, if there are hairy folk there, they will connect with you if you have the right intentions, a pure heart, and respect them, and you love the earth, and you show them that. I mean, they followed me around for a long time to see how I acted when I was out here, and whenever I go on my walks, they wanted to be absolutely certain of who I was, and I appreciate that. They want to see that you're not a destructive kind of individual and you actually care for the earth. So anyway, I hope this has been of some interest to some of you, and I'd love to hear from anybody else who's having similar experiences. Thanks for having an interest in the Yowies of Southern Australia. Take care. Just before I go, I want to show you I left a small sign here, just a triangle. I have the same kind of bark from up there. And I left a notepad hiding in there with pen and pencil and have shown her how to use them. We'll see what happens. There's an apple in there and a sign there. I'll know if an animal comes through and, you know, crushes it or moves it, but if it's rearranged into something else interesting, that's obviously a clear sign that she's interacting. One thing I forgot to mention is that I've developed a set of signs or symbols, if you like, different shapes and things that can be done with sticks, bark, you know, rocks, that sort of thing. Just as a way of interacting outside, but I've also suggested that when she's ready she can come into the house. And certainly some of the habituators are people who are having these close relationships, having interactions inside their house. So that's where I'm hoping things will go. So, yeah. Here's another one of our residents. If you can see him. A bit hard to keep that steady. It's an echidna. Hasn't seen me yet, and he's looking for ants. Some kangaroos on the right there. No, he's happy. I could walk in and film him, but I'll have to be careful because a lot of bark and branches there, and I'll get his attention and then he'll burrow in. He's one of the local males that I often see here. Always digging, always eating ants. He'll eat ants no matter what type. No matter how dangerous to us, they seem to be able to hurt him or any of them. I'll just see if I can find another way in without disturbing them too much. Maybe get a closer view. Vibration on the ground. See, it's pretty crunchy underfoot. If you can't see me, I might be able to get close. Oops. I think he's onto me. Maybe I'll just go near that tree. Once he knows I'm following him, he'll burrow in, so I prefer not to spook him. Oh, I think he's gone hiding already.